Hi guys and welcome to my channel. My name is Tina and my aim is to improve your drawings just like others have done for me when I just started out. Now remember, a few weeks ago I did this tutorial on how to create tiger eyes with only a set of 36 pencils. This week I'm doing the exact same eyes actually, but I'm doing them in pastel. For this I'm working with the 36 set from Stabilo. These pencils have a really good price to quality ratio, and even as your skills get better and you buy more art supplies, you are still going to want to use these. They are just so good. If you happen to have another set, a lot of colors match across the different brands, so no need to worry, you can still follow along. Let's get started with our drawing now. I'll make sure I list the materials in the description below. I start by putting on some light yellow. By using one layer or two layers I can play with the color a little bit, making it a lighter or darker one. This is a good technique if you are limited with your pencils like we are now with the 36 set. I'm also using a brown reddish color where I need it to be darker, and I'm glazing with the orange for a more correct value of color. That's basically how you will build the entire underlayer. When blending this out, I use a blending stump. I find this tool to be the best when I'm just blending pastel pencils, because there is not as much on there. Compared to using PanPastel or soft pastel, I find a soft tool works best for blending. I'm happy with how this is looking, so I move over to the white fur. I put in some light grey, don't apply too much pressure here, and blend this out in the fur direction. I'm putting in my dark markings as well as contouring the eye. Blend this all out, and with the blending stump carefully pull some black out into the white or orange fur to create little strands of hair already. I'm happy with my underlayer, so it's time to put on some detail. That same brown I used before is going to be my first layer here. Then add in some orange and yellow, and the beauty of pastel, being able to layer light colors over top, enables us to put down the white hairs. Use the red to darken it up a bit and then finish those markings by filling it up. Make sure that you fill this up by laying down strokes and not just coloring it in. Like I said already, being able to layer light over dark is an amazing feature of pastel, and it's probably the main reason why pastel is an easy medium to create white fur. Drawing the white fur in our previous tiger eyes and colored pencil was much harder, for example. Here, since I already have some light grey down there, I can simply add white strokes on top, following the direction of the fur, and I can put them on top of the black markings as well. These show up much more of course and help build the illusion of lots of white fur. I go over there with some light blue as highlight. If they pop too much, you can always add some white. Then to help build the shape inside, I can go in with that light grey. Then the side underneath is basically a repeat of what I've done in the upper corner, but since it's a slightly darker area, we'll be using darker colors. Just keep following the direction of the fur and vary a little bit in length. And to darken it up, we go over with a dark brown before going in with a white on top. Starting on the eyelid, I first apply a layer of dark blue to give it more depth before going over with black. I also use a mix of light and dark blue for the highlights. For the eye itself, I started by coloring in the iris with a light green, putting white on top to blend and mute it down at the same time. I add in some colors to build the eye. Normally it's best to work from dark to light, but here I made an exception. Working with a limited amount of colors makes you a little bit more creative. I added a light tone, mid-tone and a dark tone, then I blended that together with some yellow, but I decided it was a little too bright, so I used some white to mute it down a little bit. And so you keep building your eye with all the colors you see on your reference picture. To finish the eye up, I add some brown, blend it out with my finger to create those spots that are so typical for a tiger eye. And then I went in with a light brown to create those lines inside the iris. Then I put in the white in the eye, and all of a sudden it starts to look glassy, reflective and wet. Also, when I created the reflection on the upside of the eye, I mostly used white and blue. The blue in the eye is a reflection of the sky. This makes your drawing look much more realistic. Even if your reference doesn't show blue in the reflected part, you can still add this in, since it will make everything much more realistic. Just make sure that your background matches this. Then we'll build the colors of the eye some more, using your light and dark brown for this. I also used it around the edge of the pupil. I darkened the highlight a bit with a dark blue, only to mute it back down with some white. And even though these color changes are minimal, if you are aiming for photorealism, you can't let them out. Whether you are working with colored pencil, pastel, or even acrylics and oil for that matter, working in a lot of layers is how to get that really realistic look. Then I created that highlight on the lower eyelid. Don't just use some grey, add some blue and even purple to make it less flat. I'm building the fur on the right, same as we did before here, with the exception that I'm using some darker colors now. As I put more and more colors on, it becomes clear that my eye isn't contrasted enough, so just go ahead and darken those darks more and lighten those lights up. Same for other areas on the left side, just keep building those colors and layers as you go. In these final layers I add more detail and start to overlap some of the fur on top of each other, and letting those pencil strokes show through rather than everything being so blurry. Same way like last time, I'm also dividing this drawing into two halves. First half I will be using pencils from the set, but for the second half I'm going to be using 5 PanPastels. For those of you who are unfamiliar with these, it's basically compressed pastel in a little container. And I know they are quite expensive to buy, but the beauty is that when you buy 5 of the basic colors, you can create so much more color yourself. Each pan contains 9mm of color, that is 40% more than the average pastel stick, and giving you approximately 4 to 5 times more coverage. And that is our left side, guys. I think we only used about 10 different colors for this. Okay, now let's move on to the right side, where I'll be building my underlayer with PanPastel. I only use 5 colors, being blue, yellow, red, black and white, and mixed all of the colors I needed on a sheet of printer paper. It just gives you a big advantage to use PanPastels in comparison to only pencils. For one, it's probably the fastest way to work. Even on the small piece, the difference in time it took me to complete the 2 halves was already significant. You have more control over the amount of pastel going onto the piece, so it's much easier to add lots of layers afterwards. You don't need to use a lot of pastel from the pan, so they do last a long time. And when you are working just with pastel pencils, this can be the most expensive way to do a piece, especially when you are working on a larger piece. Because yes, it's cheaper to buy a pastel pencil set in comparison to soft pastel or PanPastel, but the amount of pastel you get in each pencil is really not that much when you compare it to the rest. So if you are doing an entire piece, you are going to wear it down faster and you are going to have to buy more often. But if you can't afford more, and especially if you are able to work small, pencils are still a great way to start out. Your underlayer will be made up from different colors than the pencils that will go over them, resulting in a piece with much more depth if you only have 36 pencils to use. When you're working with just pastel pencils, they are not as bright as some of the other options out there, so sometimes it can be a bit hard to get those really bright, vivid colors. When it comes to building the fur itself, it's actually the same way we did the other side. But you can see, because of the underlayer and the more vivid colors I could apply here, the end result is a much more realistic look, with a lot of more depth than the left side. Keep in mind that this isn't because we're using PanPastel, it's because we had the ability to use more colors. Pastel is really all about building those colors layer by layer, and the more colors you can choose from to help build those layers, the better looking your drawing will be. Especially if your aim is realism, so if you're on a budget, investing some money in these 5 basic colors is a really good decision. Since this is a small piece, it doesn't make sense to put down PanPastel for the eye. Instead, we are going to repeat the exact same process like we did for the left one. Just take a good look at your reference to find all those colors that build the color of the eye. If you haven't already and you like my content, feel free to subscribe to my channel. I usually upload a video each Friday, but hit that bell notification if you never want to miss out on any of my videos. And that is it, guys, for this week's tutorial. I hope you find this one useful. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Next week I'll upload a video about the difference between the two mediums I use most, colored and pastel pencils. Until then, have a great week!